Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, it's your favorite history teacher back at you again with another historical video. Today, we're gonna, again, on that World War II train, choo choo, we are gonna, I don't know why I call it a train, but we're gonna be talking about more positive things like how the Allies won. So let's get into it. Let's get into the notes. So here you go. Let me wait for this to present. Yesterday was a very, very, very long lecture. So sorry about it. It was a lot. It was the Holocaust. It was the rape of Nanking. It was the beginnings of Nazi domination, blitzkrieg, all that. So we heard about the Axis. Now we're going to learn about the Allies. And this is sort of a review because, as we all know, World War II is super cool. So many movies are made in response to all the different stories across World War II. There we go. Chapter 14, Section 3, Allies Turn the Tide. The tide of war. Okay, that was your warm-up objectives. We're going to learn how the Allies changed the momentum of the war in their favor, analyze the major turning points of the war, and discuss the significance of D-Day in world history. So much like World War I was, we have another total war here in World War II. And that's, again, a nation devoting all the resources toward the war effort. Democratic governments like in the US and Great Britain strengthened their political powers. They directed all economic resources into the war effort, ordering factories to stop making cars or refrigerators and have them start turning out airplanes or tanks. You have governments are going to implement programs to ration or control the amount of food and other vital goods consumers could buy. Under the pressures of the war, governments even restricted the rights of citizens, censoring the press and using propaganda to win support for the war. Women, hey, y'all ain't at the end of the chapter or at the end of the section with one little paragraph. You're at the very beginning. Women helped too, and as men joined the military to fight, millions upon millions of women around the world replaced them in essential war industry jobs. You have the example of Rosie the Riveter, symbolizing women working in the United States. And it was used as a recruiting tool to get women to come to work. Much of a shift in US history, and I would assume European history as well, because women just weren't on the equal playing field yet. They would build ships, airplanes, munitions, you name it, they built it. So here you have that famous Rosie the Riveter pulling up her sleeves, saying, "We can do it." Here's another picture of Rosie the Riveter that I found that, it's not all pretty and dolled up like that. But, she's got some medals. She's eating a sandwich. She's got a rivet gun. Her name is Rosie. And yeah, propaganda. This right here is, what is it? It's the Rosie. I went and visited this building my first year teaching. I had an old roommate. He lives in Richmond. Old college roommate who's also a teacher, history teacher. And we visited this place that he told me about. And here, this building right here on the right, that is what's called the Rosie the Riveter Museum. And it's very interesting. I think it was free on the day we went. It was like a Sunday. And I tried organizing a field trip, but just never happened. But yeah, there's the Rosie Riveter Museum. This right here, this building in the middle, that was a restaurant. It was very good. And here, this big building used to, as you can see, we're on a dock. And this used to be a Kaiser shipyard. This is where they built the ships. On the dock are the actual rails where they would, start from one end, shipments and, have it move along here. It was kind of, I'm going to get all sappy on you. It was kind of breathtaking to visit something historic as a Kaiser shipyard. Now, this building obviously isn't a Kaiser shipyard anymore. It's used for like renting out art galleries or dance ball, I don't know, big parties. But yeah, that's a pretty famous one. It was pretty cool to walk along, and people kind of take it for granted nowadays, but I enjoyed it. Anywho, so Skr, get your feelings out of this, Mr. Ovalle. So the Japanese take some damage. They suffered their first serious setback at the Battle of the Coral Sea. It was the first time in naval history that enemy ships never saw each other. So it was all about the planes fighting in the sky, launching from aircraft carriers, doing all the fighting. This will stop the Japanese advancements in Southeast Asia for a time. And another big victory, a turning point in the war, was the Battle of Midway Island. And if you don't know, Midway is midway between the United States and Japan. And Americans decoded, we had Japanese code breakers decode a message of when the Japanese were going to attack. And through this espionage, they planned for the attack. So as the Japanese launched their first wave, and they went back to refuel and reload ammunition, that's when right away the American planes launched from the island, and Japan only had at that time about 6 aircraft carriers. 3 of them were sunk with fairly quickly, and a 4th one was damaged, and then it ended up sinking. So of the 4 aircraft carriers that they came with to the fight, they lost them all. And this would be a devastating blow for the Japanese, and they're unable to launch any more offensive operations in Southeast Asia, the Pacific Islands, all that. Unable to launch it because, you don't know, aircraft carriers are big. They're like a city on a boat. They're fairly huge. All right, this is a map of the Coral Sea, right in between Papua New Guinea and Australia. Hey, you guys remember this map? This looks familiar. Anyways, Battle of Coral Sea is right here, and it was a very important. It was an even battle, but more so it was kind of a loss for the Japanese, because we prevented them from winning, which would give them a stronghold to launch an attack on Australia, which is a major outpost for the Allies in the Pacific. If we lose Australia, who knows what would happen? All right, so it was a good thing. It was a good thing they won. I believe these are flak shot into the sky to disrupt, disorientate. I don't know if that's a word. What do you call it? Airplane fighters. I can't talk. Here's another battle. It's a representation. It looks a little bit cartoony. That's why it's not real. And then you have the Battle of Midway. So you got the 4 aircraft carriers, and you got the 2 up here chilling. And we knew they were coming right here. Midway Island. It's very small. You can't see it. And yeah, we attacked them and took care of business. All right, so the big three meet. We got another big three. Not LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh, or Steph Curry, Draymond Green, or Klay Thompson. This big three for World War II is Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt of the United States, and our boy Daddy Joseph Stalin, dictator, USSR. And they agreed to focus on finishing the war in Europe before turning their eyes to the Pacific and Asia. And from the outset, they didn't really trust each other. Churchill and Roosevelt, kind of on the same terms, thought Stalin would want to dominate Europe. Is that a surprise? And Stalin thought the West would destroy communism. Foreshadow. This is a, if I had a foreshadow filter, foreshadow. However, they came to an agreement. They also decided to open up a second front in Europe to relieve pressure on the Soviet Union. Stalin wanted a swift response to attack Europe right away. Churchill and Roosevelt told them that they didn't have the resources yet. Come on, guy. And Stalin saw it as a ploy to weaken the Soviet Union, have more and more people die, lose their resources, and then, you know, America and Great Britain would be seen as the heroic victors. So here you have the big three. That's our president at the time, FDR, Winston Churchill, and we already know this guy, Stalin. All right, Allies take North Africa. So remember, there was Operation Sea Lion, there was Operation Barbarossa, and now Operation Torch. Operation Torch. Anywho, the Allies chose to open up a second front in North Africa, and it would help relieve pressure of Great Britain in Egypt versus the Germans. Remember, that was a vital supply line for the British to have control of the Suez Canal and, you know, a foothold in the Middle East. They wanted it back, obviously. So you have the Battle of El Alamein, and it was a big battle. We're not going to talk about the little ones. This is just, you know, the big battle, the biggest battle of it. You have General Bernard Monty Montgomery fought General Irwin the Desert Fox Rommel, and they didn't really like fight each other, okay? But you get what I'm saying. These two leaders. In the end, the British stopped the German advancements. Allied tanks are going to push the Germans west from Tunisia into Libya. Remember that, those locations, North Africa. And then you have the Americans coming in hot under the leadership of General Dwight D. I'm going to be the future president Eisenhower, leading British troops in Morocco and Algeria eastward to trap the Germans on both sides. Hey, look, I just said that. So they're going to trap the German army on both sides, and it's going to lead to their surrender in North Africa, 1943. And it's not to say that the induction of the United States brought total success. There were some failures because this was the first time, you know, that we had entered this modern World War II war. And instead of invading a heavily fortified west coast of Europe, occupied by the Nazi strong army machine, let's attack the soft underbelly, as they like to call it, the soft underbelly of the Nazi Empire in North Africa, and get the Allied troops more experience, get the Americans rough and ready to handle their business. And eventually, notice, this is 1943. We enter the war in 1941. I mean, albeit it's December 1941. So this is 1943. So about a year of fighting in Africa. Here's a map of the Battle of El Alamein. If you know how to read maps, you can do that. That's Erwin Rommel. I think we saw him yesterday. So here you have the landings of the American forces. And hey, is that city say bougie? Interesting. So they would, here's Tunisia. So they would march their ways eastward to Trapani. So Italy, with North Africa under control, the Allies are going to decide to cross the Mediterranean Sea into Italy. This is still part of Operation Torch, BT dubs. And the British and American troops landed at the island of Sicily, you know, where the boot is kicking. And they're able to invade southern Italy shortly after. They're going to defeat Italian forces within a month. And after these small defeats, Italians started to question whether the leadership of Benito Mussolini was in fact the thing they needed. And it was not. They decided to overthrow Mussolini. Hitler, who admires Mussolini, is going to try and, you know, come to his rescue once again and sneak him out of the country. But just as he was about to escape, he was held up at a traffic stop, and they found out that it was Mussolini trying to flee the country. So he was caught, arrested, and executed. And then the next 18 months, the Allies are going to move slowly up the peninsula, although suffering huge losses. And it's not to say that it was an easy campaign. It was a long, grueling. If it took about a year to handle North Africa, it takes a year and a half to handle Italy. And the fighting is going to keep going on past, you know, D-Day into 1945. It was a fairly tough campaign. But in the end, the Italian invasion was successful because it weakened Hitler by opening up the second front. Again, learn from your mistakes. I feel like history, as cliche as it sounds, repeats itself. And here it is evident. World War I, Germany did not want to fight a two-front war. What happened? They fought a two-front war, and it ended up leading to them signing the Treaty of Versailles. Here, you have near domination of Europe under Hitler, under the German army, the Italian army, whatever you want to call it. And then they invade Russia to the east. And, you know, Russia's kind of holding their own. They got a lot of people there, right? They're the most populous country in the world then. And now they lose their foothold in North Africa. And Italy was a better chance of success than invading German-occupied France. So they just kept going. They're like, hey, we need to divert resources to Italy. We need to send men to Italy. We got men in Russia, now we got men in Italy. We had people in North Africa. So now they're like, oh, what's next? And here's Mussolini and his wife. Why they kill his wife? Extra credit, I want to know. 2 extra credit questions. Why was his wife killed as well? And for this picture, why were they hung upside down? Okay, if you can find that, extra credit. Extra credit, people. We all love some extra credit. All right, Stalingrad. Another major turning point of the war for the Allies was the Battle of Stalingrad. After the Blitzkrieg was successful, the Germans were stalled on the outskirts of Moscow and Leningrad. In 1942, after the snows thawed, they launched a new attack for the rich oil fields of southern Soviet Union. And this was one of the most bloodiest, deadliest battles of the war. Hitler was determined to take the city named after the Soviet Union's leader, Stalin. Germans will surround the city. And in the end, winter was coming yet again. And what do we know about that? Napoleon ring a bell? And it was a bitter street by street, house by house fight. And by November, the civilians and resistance in Stalingrad defending themselves against the Germans, but bought the Soviets some time to supply them with reinforcements. They surround the city. The tired, starving troops surrendered outside Stalingrad, 1943. The Red Army is going to take control from then on in, gain all the momentum, and force the invaders out of the Soviet Union. And by 1944, the Soviet Union began their offensive of invading Eastern Europe. And if you don't know, if you don't remember from Napoleon, French Revolution, the third, was it that was the third unit? If you're ever to become a dictator of this country or another country or city, never invade Russia during the winter, people. That's another one of Hitler's failures. That one's pretty simple. Here you have another map of Stalingrad and all these armies, right? The key was cut off in this picture, but you get the point. Here are some dead bodies in the snow. D-Day. Okay, so now 1943. 1943 was kind of a bad year. 1943 was a bad year for the Japanese and the Germans and Italians. Not such a good year. It's like 2020 for the Axis powers. So by 1944, the Allies were ready to invade German-occupied France. You have what's called Operation Overlord. Why is this not underlined? This needs to be underlined, people. Operation Overlord. And the Allies would invade France just before midnight, June 5th, on June 5th, and they would send paratroopers. They sent them, if you know Saving Private Ryan, you know the story. And they sent paratroopers at night first behind enemy lines. And I don't know why this isn't underlined either. D-Day, which is part of Operation Overlord. Operation Overlord is the plans to invade German-occupied France. D-Day is just the day of destruction. Other extra credit question. What does D-Day even mean? I don't know what that D means. Does it mean a destruction? Determination Day? What does the D mean? All right. So, June 6, 1944, 150,000 Allied troops crossed the English Channel to land at the beaches of Normandy. They would fight their way to shore amid underwater mines and raking machine guns. Stop me if I'm wrong about Saving Private Ryan. And in early August, under the leadership of General George Patton, British and American troops broke the defenses and advanced towards Europe. Advanced towards Paris. And Paris was the key, right? So I say it briefly. It was a long, arduous battle. All right. And if it really wasn't for D-Day, who really knows? You got Battle of Stalingrad in the east, you got Midway in the Pacific, and you got D-Day in Western Europe. So and if you want to say the Battle of El Alamein in North Africa. Very important battles, very important turning points, because this is the time when they just start reeling out of control, the Nazis. Meanwhile, the Allies invaded through southern Italy again as well. French opposition grew as Allies marched closer and closer to Paris, and the Germans will retreat. The Allies entered Paris August 25th. So nearly 2 months, about 2.5 months of fighting from D-Day, the actual launch, to August 25th. And a month later, so September 25th, all of France was freed. Because remember the puppet government. Here's a horrible map of the beaches at Normandy. You have, what are they? Oh, there's Omaha. Omaha, I think it was gold. Oh man, I don't remember. I know you're Omaha gold. I think one was sword. So the most deadliest beach was Omaha, and that was strictly all American soldiers. The rest were like U.S. and British, or British and Canadian, and some French. But Omaha was the most resistant of the beaches, heavily fortified. Here you have a picture after the Allies were successful in taking over. The rest come through. And here you got the brave soldiers leaving the landing boats, the landing craft. If you ever played Boom Beach, it looks familiar, right? Anyways, Allies advanced. Germany was under the constant bombing, just like they bombed Britain for 2 years. Talk about if you were the Germans, like, talk about how demoralizing this would be. For 2 years, the Allies will bomb military bases, factories, railroads, oil depots, and eventually cities. And the goal was to cripple the Germans' industries and destroy civilian morale. Well, bravo, because I mean, you do it for 2 years? Like, come on. Obviously, they're not civilian targets. These are military targets, right? And that's how you do it. That's how you demoralize morale. They hit another, we lost another base. We lost another factory. We lost another, supplies can't get here because the railroad is broken. Like, what can you do? So after France, the Allies invaded through Belgium and were met with heavy resistance of German forces. You have something called Battle of the Bulge, the kind of the last stitch battle, the last major battle of the war in Europe, where both sides will take terrible losses. It was Hitler's quote unquote last stand. It'll last over a month, but the Germans couldn't break through. The Allies had too much momentum. And the Soviets will push towards Berlin from the east, and Hitler's support will decline throughout Germany. By 1945, defeat was inevitable. So you have something called the Yalta Conference. February 1945, the big three yet met again at Yalta in the Soviet Union. Stalin insisted that the Soviet Union remain in control of Eastern Europe to protect itself from future aggression. They've kind of been invaded. They were invaded a little bit in World War I, right? So you have Napoleon in 1812, right? You have 100 years later, 1914, 15, 16, whatever, invaded. And then you have about 30, 20, 26, whatever years later, invaded again. So 3 times in about 130 years, they're invaded. They don't want that, right? Kind of seems reasonable. However, Churchill and Roosevelt favored the idea of self-determination for Europe. However, Churchill and Roosevelt would need Stalin's support to end the war. So they agreed that the U.S. would enter the war against Japan 3 months after Germany's surrender. They promised Stalin that he would get the Sakhalin Island and Kuril Islands as an occupation zone in Korea, as well as Sakhalin Island is a fairly substantial port on the east side of the continent of Asia. And they agreed that they would divide Germany into 4 zones of occupation governed by the US, France, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union. And hey, there we go. We finished. Yeah, a little bit shorter in retrospect. So yeah, we talked a lot about. We didn't do any talking. A lot of discussion about how the war turned in the favor of the Allies, and discussing some of the major battles and turning points in the war. And yeah, hopefully you guys did enjoy. As always, make sure you slap that like button. Your homework is page 481, 3 through 5. And like I said, hopefully you guys did enjoy. And as always, stay safe, wash your hands,